just no surprise at any I think at any 1A
Right.
to have that. Do you have the I mean I can bring them up, or do you have the games already brought up?
Yeah, I
You
got the
do?
games.
If you
Yeah.
do, we can share your you want to share your screen, we can.
Yeah. Could do that. Let me.
So
Yeah.
last week, what did you do? I know what you
I
did, but maybe you might tell everybody else what you did.
well, I had a great time. I had to get out my roller skates and
Yeah.
watch Millbrook and Rolesville play. That was a back and forth game. Rolesville got out with a 14-0 lead. Then it kind of went. Millbrook scored a couple touchdowns and kind of seesawed. Millbrook actually had the lead for I think it was like 28-21, and at halftime it was 28 all. Then it kind of went back and forth a little bit.
Mhm.
The key thing I think it was like 38-31 Millbrook, and they had the ball and they went for a fourth down. And if they got the fourth down, I think that game the momentum would have taken it Millbrook's way, and they didn't. Rolesville stopped them, and Rolesville went down the field, scored a touchdown. Millbrook scored a field goal, making 41-38, and then uh, I think that's right. And then Rolesville scored, and anyway, it ended up tied 48-48 at in regulation, and just a lot of great passing. The Rolesville quarterback, he's committed to South Florida, and
Mhm.
I think he's definitely the best quarterback I've seen this whole entire year. He is a man. He's a man among boys on that field.
Right.
He is just a. I mean, you look at him. He's like 6'4". I'm gonna say probably 210, 215 or so. Not an ounce of fat on him.
Mhm.
He looked like a Greek god. And I mean, if anything, he can probably gain 15, 20 pounds easily.
Right.
But he is just a phenomenal human being. I mean, just a great fellow. He won't rush a pass, which I like.
Right.
He will look around. He will not make a bad pass. He'll run before he makes a bad pass, which I appreciate. And when you have legs like he does, you can
Mhm.
run all day. So that was a heck of a game. How about you, Dale?
Well, let me see if I can stop being so white.
Might be a little bit of a challenge, but
I'm
anyway.
white enough, but I'm I went to watch an awesome football game, and I've got to say it's probably one of the best football games I've seen, or actually of all time. It was between Providence Day and Raven Gap, and man, I'm gonna tell you what; those are two teams that can compete with 4A football here. Um, I had never seen Raven Gap before, and uh, you want to talk about a team that when they didn't just look the part, and when you look at them, you think you're looking at 4A team with big time players, and they have one of the best football players I have seen definitely this year. A kid is committed to Michigan. Um, he played at receiver. He played on defense. He was their kicker, their
Oh wow.
place kicker. I mean, he was one of those players that was probably coach said, you know what, you got to take a play off and go sell some popcorn real quick. He really was that kind of player. The game was a fantastic ball game, very close ball game. Um, just just an absolute joy if you're a fan. And I think both teams, while Raven Gap lost, in a very close game, I think they have to feel kind of good about the game itself because it was a very clean game, very well officiated. Um, just everything you could want uh, was there. And I'm going to tell you what, Providence Day is Chad Greer's building something there. So you're going to see that program start playing more of a national kind of schedule, I think,
Right.
and they will compete. Just really, there are athletes there. And Jim, I'm tell you what. So I'm standing there on the sideline talking with uh, Highlight White, Andre White, played quarterback at Concord back. He got his nickname from Paul Cameron, and he's introducing me to a couple of. He's an assistant coach at Providence Day, and he's got this strong desire to learn to be a better coach, and I commend him for that. He coached my boys when they were at Olympic, but he's introducing me to some of the younger kids. So there's this kid, Jim, that's 6'6", probably a solid 250, and he plays basketball. He's a freshman, and this is a kid that when you look at him, you know that one, this kid's going to be a Division I player, and this might even be a kid that moves on to Sunday playing. From talking with several people, a great athlete, and he had on a lineman number. And I asked him. So I asked a few people there, what was why was he a lineman? Blah blah blah. So finally, I went up to him. I go, why is he not a tight end? So he's a good basketball player, so that tells me he's got good feet, good hands, all that other kind of good stuff. And I went up and asked him. I said, why aren't you playing tight end? He said, I do. I said, well, why are you wearing a lineman's number? And he said, well, when I first came onto the team, they put me at line. And he said, I'm now a tight end. So I'm just mentioning this because they were showing, Highlight was introducing me to some eighth graders, a couple of eighth graders that'll be coming up. And man, when you look at these kids, physically, they're awesome. This other kid's a wide receiver, and he already looks the body part of a like a junior, wide receiver, a junior Muhammad Massaquoi kind of deal. So I'm just saying this because I think we're going to have some awesome football. And Jim, I got to thinking about that last night because of what happened last week with the NCHSAA, not the NCHSAA, but our state government in HB 91. And we discussed this a little bit last week about, how things are going to go forward. And that all passed. I guess the governor's got to sign it. And I haven't seen if
he signed it.
He did sign it?
Yeah, he signed it.
I hadn't paid it attention, and it was kind of a lost hope to think that he would say, no, wait a minute, I'm not signing that in. But maybe some of the districts will not go along. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If the NCHSAA is not instated as the governing body, really what was going through my mind last Friday night was, wouldn't it be good to have those two teams would compete at 4A? They had numbers and they had athletes. I mean, they just had everything. They had all the elements you could see. I don't know about the age of the Raven Gap people, but I do know that Providence Day has a lot of youth, and I just expect there to be migration of players to there. And, maybe the NCHSAA can go into the new association that maybe some districts in North Carolina, if there's a non-NCHSAA group, because think about it, who could manage? How could we have a transition to another group next season and still have all of what we have, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the thing that nobody's talking about though is all that money that's in the bank accounts and the.
Right.
I mean, that money is not just going away. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with there was a memorandum of understanding or whatever it is between the state and the association. I think that's kind of what's coming down to. What this
Mhm.
final passage was so watered down compared. It wasn't nearly draconian like what we saw this summer, where they were
Right.
basically trying to dismantle the association.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Do away with it. Yeah.
to me, it was kind of like saving face to a certain degree. The bill is a bunch of nothing, to be honest with you. I mean, I think what you're going to see is probably some elimination and some fines, and maybe a revamping about who has to forfeit games or who has to be disqualified for the playoffs. But
See, that's
and I don't really like having Raleigh involved in that, to be honest with you. I
no.
think it should be the schools themselves and the association, and not you know
So the fines, I don't
bureaucrats.
think. Yeah, the fines, I don't think should go away. Period.
I don't either. It's for wrongdoing. I mean, that's the thing about it.
That's right. The elimination part, um, forfeitures and those kinds of things might need some review. I shouldn't say might. They do need some review. Um, I don't know what can be done effectively because I'm just one person thinking, but what can be done effectively for appeals? Because an appeal process of forfeiture and say missing the playoffs is probably going to have to occur. The instance is going to occur near the end of the season, if not, at the end of the regular season.
Right.
And you're not going to have time for a proper appeal process. You can't put the playoffs on hold for an appeal here and appeal there. So I don't know if the appeal process can be improved. Well, I'm sure it can probably be improved, but how much improvement it can it can get. I think we still need to have situations where teams are not allowed to enter the playoffs. But those situations that have been maybe used in the past, and I can only think of a couple right now. The situation with Mountain Island Charter and situation with Hickory Ridge are two that those schools did not deserve to be eliminated from the playoffs, but both schools accepted it without issue. Well, I won't say
Right.
without issue. They attempted their appeals, but they didn't, go crazy and run to a legislator and say, let's do something.
Yeah, and they didn't, have some type of fake news about Q yelling at them or something. I mean, I still laugh about that politician that got on your Talking Prep show, and
Yeah,
I'm like, really? You have to make up? I mean, you hear this from a couple of coaches that probably have a bone to pick with the association anyway, and you're going to take it for gospel.
or
I mean, that's just
exactly.
it's the idiocy of America a lot of times.
You know what?
It,
They probably heard it not even from a head coach.
oh, I'm sure it's probably heard third hand if anything, and
Well,
the
they've
head
heard it.
coach probably says something in jest anyway.
Well, could have heard it from a volunteer coach
Yeah,
or an assistant coach, but very unlikely. Though I'm not going to say. I think the probability is lower that it came from a head coach. And certainly, I feel like if you took those questions, took the question to the mass of the NCHSAA membership, do you feel like you could be arbitrarily disqualified? If you didn't violate anything, if you did not break any rules,
right.
and questioning management is not breaking a rule. So if you did not break any rules, do you think you could be disqualified from the playoffs? And we have a merit-based system, and because of that, it's easy, and it's with as much transparency as we would like to have. That's one thing that's transparent.
Right.
They place a formula out that says this is what's going to be used to qualify. They don't revamp it, and you're standing. If you're paying attention, you're standing all the way through. So, and if you did not make it, you've got objective data, and that's the key thing is it is objective. We may not agree with all the metrics of how they are generated, but it's all generated from objective data.
Right.
None of it's subjective. So anyway, that's going to bother us until I see that the NCHSAA at least is going to be governed next year. If they're not the governing body, then we're in a world of hurt.
You know what? Let's go ahead and have 300 or was it 420 different governing bodies. Have every school have their own governing body and let them decide to give everybody a state championship while you're at it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's what people don't. Also, I think me and you understand it, but I don't think a lot of people understand the special interests they're involved in it. There are certain places in North Carolina that you just don't mess around with. Back in the 80s and 90s, it happened to be Wilson County, as you well know. We had a governor there for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the Department of Transportation, you might have 30-40% of the people in the division highways from Wilson County. I know a couple of people from Stanley County, one being my dad that worked in the division of highways, but there was a lot of Wilson County people. You don't mess around with the power on that.
Right.
That's the thing about it, though. Is people see what they want to see, and there's a lot of confirmation bias also. Where if I wanted to turn on the news to find out something that meets my ideology, I have vast array of things to get on the to watch. So
Yep.
it's the same thing with the state legislature, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that's right. So we'll see what happens with that. But it did go through my head as I was watching Providence Day and Raven Gap play. Man, I'd love to see those two teams playing top teams throughout, the public ranks. But I understand the disparity with a Providence Day and how they get athletes versus and I don't know if the situation is the same with Raven Gap. I don't know if you've ever been to the
That's in
Raven
Georgia,
Gap.
isn't it?
It is, but there's Raven Gap is right there on the North Carolina,
Right.
Georgia. And I'm doubtful they have a lot of I don't know. I need to look and see what is the high school situation there. But certainly with the privates, there's an unfair advantage concerning potential reclassification and recruitment and being able to give scholarships more easily. These are things that don't fall in with a Charlotte Catholic, a Cardinal Gibbons. You don't have those issues with them.
Yeah,
But
I still say if the state legislature pulls out all the charters and the traditional schools. If I was the four Catholic parochial schools, I'd just say, you know what, we'll stay at this association. We'll keep the $45 million. Thank you very much.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know what they would do with. I know that there's people within that movement that want Charlotte Catholic out, which makes no sense. They're, in my opinion, they're the most ethical operating
Oh yeah.
entity within the NCHSAA. And I'm sorry to the other public schools, but you all have some kind of issues with recruiting. And it just doesn't happen. If it happens at Catholic, it happens when the kids are 6, 7, 8 years old, because those kids are in that system, from Holy Trinity up. And probably youth ball prior. They're all together. So that's a whole nother entity. But it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. I don't know when they'll let us know. Hopefully before the end of this season.
Right.
We'll know what we're going to be rolling into next year. But anyway, let's talk some of what's going on. Other than we had a few surprises last week, Jim.
Yeah, we did.
Or surprises. They surprised you and I because I know
Yeah.
there were a number of games we picked and they went the other way.
Exactly. I mean, there was several of them. Like I'm going down here. The Pender beat Northmore 50-12. That just totally blew my mind away. I didn't see that happening. The big shocker though was Murphy beating Eastern Randolph by 33 points. I
Yes,
picked Eastern Randolph to win that game. At the same time, I also knew that Murphy. You don't dismiss Murphy in
you
November or
never
December.
you never dismiss them, no.
Yeah.
But
And
I
I
think
knew
as
that
we,
North Rowan Robbinsville game would be a close one.
uh-huh.
And the Mitchell Thomasville, I knew that was going to be a close one. Uh, but I'll tell you what, let's go and look at this week's matchup. What do you think?
Yeah. All right. We'll see if you're crazy this week.
All right, am I sane or insane here?
All
You
right.
got Tarboro, who I think they've thrown the ball 38 times in 12 games this year. They don't throw the ball. They are a running team. They're playing Northampton, who is another running team. The book on Tarboro, if you're going to beat Tarboro, you got to be able to pass the ball. You got to go vertical. You got to spread out the field. Northampton is not the team to do that. Tarboro, to me, is going to win probably 4 touchdowns. Am I sane or insane?
4 touchdowns. Tarboro's winning the ball game.
Yeah.
And Tarboro's going to win the ball game, I think, with a little bit of ease at least. 4 scores is 28 points, up to 28 points, 42-14. I don't know. I think 3, 4's maybe not out of the realm of possibility at this late in the. So that's the thing, Jim, is this late in the season or in the playoffs, and I think that's one of the things we kind of it's hard to calculate and played into some of the results last week is teams will play better in the playoffs. But it goes both ways. Good teams are going to get better as you get closer. You should get better as you get closer. So I'm going to say you're semi-sane, something like that.
That was probably the biggest blowout, our biggest margin this whole week. This is just to me, this is the one pick I feel pretty comfortable about picking. The rest of them is just
Right.
it's 6 and 1, half a dozen of the other. Now the other game here, let's go down here in the East. Pender versus Northside. Northside is a running team. They like to run. A lot of the talent from the old Plymouth High School ends up over at Northside. Northside is not that far from Plymouth, and they're a team though that they'll have 3 runners that will make you stay honest. They don't have much of a passing game, and the with the Patriots, Pender Patriots, a little bit different, but not much. They throw the ball probably 10 or they probably run the ball 10 times more than they pass. I'm gonna say they're somewhat Pender and Northside are kind of mirror each other on that. I think it goes back to who has the better defense, who's played the tougher schedule at this time. I'm going to go with Northside, but I'm going to say it's less than a score, less than a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. I'm going with Northside as well. And so I think you're saying in all of your statements there, including being inside of one score, so 7 or less. Yeah.
Now this
Maybe a
next
4-point
game,
spread.
Murphy Robbinsville. These teams seem like they play twice a year, once in the regular season, once in the playoffs. It used to be whoever won that game in the 1A East usually decide who was going to represent the East in the 1As. This is going to be a heck of a game. Robbinsville won the matchup earlier in the season. Murphy was a little bit banged up at the time. Robbinsville happened to be a little bit more healthy at the time. Right now, Murphy is on a roll. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They are on a roll. They figured out Eastern Randolph, how to beat Eastern Randolph, which many teams couldn't. I mean, Eastern Alamass lost to Eastern Randolph earlier on the season. Robbinsville, I think their defense is a little bit bend but don't break. They struggle against Thomas Jefferson and they struggled against North Rowan on defense. Both teams, it's pretty healthy mix for 1A. I mean, they probably run the ball twice as much as they pass it, but both teams do have a passing game. I think the game is pretty even, but I think there's two big parts here. The game is at Robbinsville at the Oaks, and the other thing is Murphy's defense has been more stable as the season progresses, at least in the playoffs. I'm giving just the slightest edge to Murphy.
Okay, Murphy's that's a traditional going to be here team, and it's that time of season. I was picking Robinsonville to go deep, and I'm picking them to continue that run. I think you're saying in the as long as you think it's going to. I think this is a 1-score game. But I'm on the other side of the score than you.
Gotcha.
So I think I can accept what you're saying, though.
There's another interesting thing about this game, though. I think if you see a lot of scoring in this game by both teams, is probably going to favor Robbinsville, believe it or not. If they're able to capitalize on mistakes, the Bulldogs will make mistakes. These we're talking about not 10th, 11th, 12th grade kids. If it's what you do when this happens, do you capitalize on it or do you give it up? Any points, if you get to the red zone, is 4th down, you better go for the field goal if you got a kicker, and both teams have a kicker on that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tough one on that. Now, going down to the other side here, Mitchell has had a really good season this year. Mount Airy has had a phenomenal season this year. They've allowed exactly 25 points this whole season. And Mount Airy's defense is just, I mean, part of a good defense also is having an explosive offense where you make the other team go outside their norm. A lot of these 1A teams like to run the ball. If you make them pass because they're down 2 touchdowns, bad things are going to happen. And a lot of these teams like Starmount, I mean, Starmount runs, they rely on the run. And Mount Airy is going to win this game. I'm going to say 2 scores. It could go a little bit more than that, but I'm going to say it's going to be something like a 21-7, maybe 28-7 Mount Airy win.
I agree. I was thinking 2 scores. 3, I don't know, because I still believe, again, this could be one of those. Mount Airy's not a team that you discount, and momentum plays huge, I think, right now. I mean, it always plays huge, but I just think as we get, we're right there at getting to the regional. You're 2 games away from state championship. Momentum can carry you a long way. So I wouldn't discount them, but I'm with you on the pick and probably on the score, but I would think about a 28-14 score.
Gotcha. Yeah, the interesting thing about it, just looking at the 1As here on the On the west, the only team I really feel comfortable winning is Mount Airy, and on the
Mm-hmm.
east, I think it's Tarboro. The other games, I mean, the other two games are just, it's pick a team and wish you the best of luck on that. It's going to
Well,
be tough.
I'm still riding Tarboro all the way. I think
Y-
they win the state championship in 1A, but we'll see. Mount Airy could, they get there, they could certainly put up a challenge to it, but I'm still picking Tarboro.
Now going to the two-way east, going to the two ways. Princeton all over Nash Central last week, 63-12. Princeton runs the ball and then they run some more. They're kind of like Tarboro. They're the two-way
Mm-hmm.
version of Tarboro. They know how to run the ball. St. Paul's, I picked Whiteville to win that game. I think you picked St. Paul's. That was one of those coin flips.
Mm-hmm.
This one right here is another coin flip. If you ask me, St. Paul's, they have a passing game, and I don't know how Princeton is going to handle St. Paul's able to
Right.
to throw the ball, spread the field around a little bit. But St. Paul's is, I mean, they're still they're a smash mouth team. I mean, they're big guys too. This is going to be a close one. I'm going to go with Princeton. I think Princeton is they kind of got lightning in the bottle on this one, but this is less than a touchdown here. I don't think there's any team that's really. I'm going to say maybe St. Paul's by 2 or 3 points. I mean, it's going to be a close one.
You mean Princeton? You
Princeton's. I'm
picking?
sorry, Princeton. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm gonna pick St. Paul's, but you're picking Princeton. Just before we move on, David Simmons popped up 3 questions, and when we get to those games, we'll make our comments. It's about Maiden. So yeah, I'm going St. Paul's
Gotcha.
again. I agree, but I agree with you. You're saying in the one score aspect. Um, and it just feels like one of those the last team with the team with the ball last um, wins unless they're unless the team gets the ball and they only have handful of seconds,
Right.
then it's a miracle. uh, but you're saying
So go down to the bottom part of the 2A East. This one right here is a granddaddy of them all game here. Northeastern Rose Hill. I've been to both places. You're talking about the game's going to be at Northeastern, but Rose Hill travels fans just as good as any two-way team in the state,
hmm
absent of maybe Shelby and Reedsville. But the that team travels. I think the home field advantage will be negated a little bit. So I don't think that's going to play a lot into it. The big thing with me though, Northeastern, they can throw the ball and run the ball with about equal efficiency. They actually have a little bit more yardage passing the ball than they do running the ball. I mean, it's like I think they're passing, they got like 2,800 yards, and running they got about 2,500 yards. So I
hmm
know that team is a well balanced team. Rose Hill, just it seems like they're getting better and better as the season goes on. They got revenge against East Stupel. They have two losses: lost to East Stupel and they lost to North Myrtle Beach, or some team, maybe not North Myrtle Beach, some team in the Myrtle Beach area. And I know that those losing to East Stupel is not there's no shame in that whatsoever.
right.
They beat a good West Craven team by 5 touchdowns. They beat North Lincoln or North Lenore by 48 points. This is this is another one that is. I, I mean, you can't go wrong with either team. To be honest with you, I'm gonna go with Rose Hill by a couple points, but Northeastern could win that game easily too.
Okay. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, but I'm going Wallace Rose Hill. And yeah, the I don't know. It's hard to say, but I believe it's going to be. It very well could be within a score. Yeah.
The thing usually with Walls Rose Hill, they just seem to be a little bit more physical as the year goes on than most
Hmm.
teams, and that might help them out. We shall see. If you're in the Elizabeth City area, by all means, go to that game. That is going to be one heck of a good game.
I think
S-
so.
Now, here is the granddaddy of all the games. Of all the teams that are in the NCHSAA right now, from 1A to 4A, from 1960 through 2021, these two teams, no other team has won more games than these two teams here, Shelby and Reedsville. You're talking about tradition. Reedsville is
Hmm.
going to carry some fans there to Shelby. No ifs, ands, or buts. They
Right.
do travel well. After Thanksgiving, I'm sure a lot of people said let's have a light lunch so we can go feast over in Shelby somewhere.
Right.
And it's going to be a fun game on this. I think Reedsville they're they're really good. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean,
They
they're
are.
undefeated. Shelby, there just seem to be a little bit more dynamic this year, and I'm going to take
Yeah.
Shelby by a touchdown. Uh, but I think that's probably on the upper limit. It might be 4 or 5 points, but I'm going to take Shelby by I'll say by 7.
Yeah, I think Shelby as well, though. It's just Reesville's good, man. Um, that's a good football team, but so is Shelby. And um, I think you're sane, but I'm going to give Shelby a few more points. I think so.
Okay.
I could see a 7 to 10 point win here, but I can also see again if momentum gets on Reedsville's side. Um, it's not. Wouldn't count them out. Shelby's going to have to play their ball game, and that would be the one of the factors that would, I think, Jim would make this either be a bigger margin or Shelby lose, and that would be one or the other team. It just doesn't. They're flat, and I don't see that happening. I think this is too big a game. So I think it's going to be a great game.
All right.
Uh, that's going to be a really, really good ball game to go watch if you like football. So yeah, I'm Shelby, but I'm a few more points than you, I think.
Gotcha. Now the next game here, this is going to be a fun one here. And be honest with you, the Shelby Reedsville game, it's just so big. And a lot of people forget that this right game here, Maiden versus East Surry, is a big game too.
It is a big game. Yeah.
But it's at the same time, you're talking about the team Shelby and Reedsville have been around for decades. I mean, 60, 70 years. I mean, every decade they're in it. Maiden has a really good program. East Surrey has really come on the last 2 or 3 decades, but it's just not the same feel as the Reedsville Shelby game.
Right.
Both these teams have good passing games. They both of them know how to spread the field. They both can run the ball. The guy that's the quarterback for East Surrey, Boaz, his older brother is playing. He's a backup quarterback at UNC. He's like the kid that torched Tarboro back in 2019.
Hmm.
It's going to be a fun game on this one. The game is at East Surrey. I don't know if that's going to make that much of a difference. To be honest with you, I think Maiden will travel pretty well to that game. Um, I'm gonna go with East Surrey, but I think this is one of those things that if Maiden capitalizes on some turnovers early in the game, that'll push it. But I think I'm just going to take East Surrey just because of the home field advantage. That's the only thing. I mean, to me, these two
Right.
teams are kind of mirror images of each other.
So I think you're saying I do believe this is going to be a one-score game again. Hope it is, because I know there's going to be people watching that potentially that really don't care who wins. They want to see a good football game, and I believe you go to this game, you're going to see a good football game.
Right.
nobody's going to, I don't believe, dominate the other. And we picked against Maiden last week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just the unfortunate thing that we're not, when you're not close to either program, it's hard to understand if there might be some extra element, propelling a team along.
Right.
But on paper, I would have to lean East Surry, and maybe because home field's usually about a 3-point advantage.
Right.
Is I know when Massey, if you're familiar with the Massey rating system and
Right.
Massey Prediction system, it's a 3-point for home field is what you get.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who you are, you get 3 points. And I probably feel that way because I do think the game is a near toss up here.
Yeah.
Don't either team blow the other out, please. I'm sure that David here would love to see Maiden blow them out, him being a Maiden fan. And I'm sure that East Surry fans probably think the same way, but I don't see that happening. So you're saying.
And the big thing here, the winner of this Maiden East Surrey game, they might be considered a sleeper, to be honest with you, because I think most people are going to pick the winner of the Shelby Reedsville game to go to the represent the
Sure.
2-way West.
So the dark horse definitely could come out of this game. That's right.
And I think that's there's going to be a lot of energy at that Shelby Reedsville game. Both teams are going to be just giving that extra 10%. And the interesting thing about those programs, Shelby and Reedsville, there's a lot of respect for each other, and you don't see that a lot of times in football. Shelby fans will talk smack about just about anybody. They leave Reedsville alone. They really do admire what Reedsville's done over the years. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch.
So everybody here should be pleased that they practiced on Turkey Day, which typically is just the third round, but still. It's hard to call this the fourth round, in my opinion. But
To me, it's like a third round.
Yeah, you're now deep in the playoffs because the third round run in the previous setups was that's a good run. So making it to Turkey Day and playing after Turkey Day is playing on the day that you're eating leftover turkey is special for everybody.
Oh, I totally agree. And I'll tell you what, it's really special when you get to see your son or a neighbor son that's playing football on Friday after Thanksgiving. That's a good feeling. And
before we move on, I'm going to say, yeah, they did play well in their win over Salisbury. That was obvious. So that was the last point there is David made, is that the football team was very good last week in their win over Salisbury. Yeah, that's a big win. That's a very, very, very good win.
That's a great win. It surprised me, to be honest with you. I thought that Salisbury was everything I've seen on film and just talking to coaches. Yeah. I didn't think Salisbury would lose that game. I thought it would be relatively close, but touchdown or whatever. But I didn't think it was going to be I think at one time the score was 32-7. At halftime it was 13-7, and that's why you have to go watch the football games.
That's right, exactly. That's why you have to go, because that's where they're decided. That's
exactly right. Now, talking about another game here, this is one I've been kind of deciding if I want to go to this game right here, Eastern Alamance versus Jacksonville. This is going to be a fun game. This is going to be a really fun game here. Eastern Alamance, they can throw the ball. They have a pretty good running game. I don't know if they have experienced a team as physical as Jacksonville. They're probably, I would say, probably hasn't. They have not. Jacksonville's hot right now, and I'm just a little bit hesitant about picking Jacksonville. I'm Eastern Alamance, and I
Okay.
won't surprise people. I'm gonna pick Jacksonville in this game. I'm gonna say it's
Oh,
probably 3 or 4 points.
see, I thought you were going to pick Jacksonville, then flipping back, but now you are picking Jacksonville.
I'm trying to keep you on your toes.
You are, because I was like, okay, no, I'm not. I don't agree with you. Oh, we agree. No, because I'm only just the opposite side of the coin here. It's the same kind of ball game margin, but I'm on the opposite side. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, the game plays out that way as far as being a tight ball game, a good football game.
Oh yeah, this would be a fun one here. I mean, they play against Rose, New Bern, they play against Conley, they play against Havelock.
Hmm.
Jacksonville is they beat Havelock by 3 scores earlier on the season.
Which is that's I'm kind of a Havelock fan. I like what they've been doing.
They beat them by 21 points, and Eastern Alamance beat them by 15. But the thing is, I don't look at games like that because football or not, it's just football's not linear, and also it doesn't stop at time. Your teams do get better. Teams do go through injuries.
Yep.
Teams do have issues that are unbeknownst to any of us in the public. And you also dealing with 10th, 11th, and 12th grade kids that their
Matchups are
hormones
good.
can change quite a bit.
Right. And plus the matchups are potentially different as well as far as what occurs on the field, what one team can do against the other team. They they may not be able to do the same things against the team that you're looking at that matched up earlier, but they're able to do so maybe run versus pass. But anyway, a good ball game there.
Now, this next game here, Rose versus uh, Scotland. Scotland used to be known for being able to run the ball. I mean, Zeus and all that, but they have a pretty
Yeah.
good passing game. Their Coach Bailey's done a fine job at Scotland. I mean, he did a good job. Was it Jack Brett's before Scotland? I can't remember. I know it was somewhere in Fayetteville. He's a darn good coach. Uh, Rose, they can spread the field around. They do have a very good passing game. This game is at Greenville. I don't think it's going to matter that much, to be honest with you. Like you said, 2 or 3 points maybe. And I think that's what the margin of the game is going to be, about 2 or 3 points. But I'm going to go with Scotland.
Yeah.
I like Scotland. I think they're a little bit more balanced this year. I think they're also playing. They play in that tough 3A, 4A conference with Richmond,
They play a
Pinecrest.
very tough conference, exactly. Um, so they're battle tested, and well, I picked them at the very start of this thing. I'm not backing off of them now, so
Yeah,
I'm picking Scotland too. It could be a score. I could see it being 2 scores, but or a score and a half, something like that. But I'm Scotland. You're
it's going
saying,
to be a fun game to go to. Now let's talk about this one right here. You got two conference foes playing, and a lot of people will complain about playing a conference foe in the playoffs, but we're in the fourth round.
yeah,
If
it's
you're
got to
playing
happen.
your conference foe, you know you're in a very good conference.
Yep.
And South Point, they've gone 10-3 so far this year. They play in they play in that dang tough conference with Kings Mountain and
Hmm.
Crest and all that. They don't pass the ball that much. They don't have to. They run probably 10 times more than they pass. But the thing is, teams, even when they know that the run's coming, is like, oh my gosh, the run is coming. What do I do? Then you have Crest. And Crest, they're just kind of, for whatever reason this year, they've kind of been going under the radar a little bit. Nick Edens, he's the coach at Crest. When you have a coach like Nick Edens on your sideline and they're kind of going under the radar, people maybe not fearing them like they should. That's kind of scary. Those guys at Crest, I know
Hmm.
they're going to be coached up quite a bit. Crest doesn't. I'm gonna say they probably is about 50-50 between the run and the pass. I'm gonna go with Crest in this game. I'm gonna see who won the matchup in the regular season. I think Crest beat South Point. They did 27-26. This game is another home game at Crest. I'm gonna go with Crest in this game. I'm gonna say probably 4 or 5 points.
So Crest is they lost to Shelby and Burns.
Crest lost to. Let's see here. Let me find out. I know they lost to Shelby, and I think they did lose to
I
Burns.
think that's their losses.
They lost to Burns the very first game of the
Yep.
season by points, and they lost to Shelby by 10.
Good football teams, right?
Right.
I'm picking Crest. It'd be cool to see South Point be able to pull this off, but last game wasn't a blowout. It was a close game.
Right.
What was the final score of the last game? Was it
27-26.
Yeah.
It
I was
doesn't get any
thinking,
closer than that.
yeah, for some reason I was thinking it was 3 points. I don't know why. I thought this 27-24 was in my head.
Maybe it was. Let me check. It might have been 29-26. Let me double check. I thought I saw 27-26.
I thought it was a 3-point game, but Jim, I'm that was weeks ago.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was reported in Max Preps as a 1 point, but it might be
Okay.
wrong.
Well, it probably is right. I'm remembering wrong. I remembered it was a close ball game, but this is going to be a close ball game. But I'm picking Crest. So you're saying here, I think we're probably on the same plate here.
Now, the next game here, Dudley. When you think of Dudley, when you go up to the Tarp, this game's not going to be at Tarpley Stadium, but when you think of Dudley, you think of good coaching, good football, and good food over there. Unfortunately, the game is over at Statesville. I don't know what the food's like over there. Dudley in the past have been known as a running team, but they have a very good passing team. And this offense this year has gotten right over 7,000 yards total offense in 13 games.
Yep.
They know how to move the ball. And they lost one game at the beginning of the season. They lost to Hillside, which is a very good program in itself. Another 4A as a 4A program. Dudley's 3A. Dudley, you can't really say anything bad about Dudley. They're the complete deal. Statesville is a team that's kind of, we're talking about Crest earlier on. Statesville's been kind of going under the radar a little bit.
You could say that.
You don't hear a lot of people talking about them. And the thing is, they've won all their games. I think the most impressive game they've won this year is probably the last game against High Brighton. But they're probably feeling a little bit disrespected. They got that home field advantage. And if the weather, how's the weather in your area? Is it dry today?
Well, but up there, who knows what it could be? It's the field could be their field could be wet. I don't know. I don't know what the weather is up there. It's not a bad day.
If anybody knows anything about Statesville, that field, it can get wet and it can stay wet for a prolonged period of time.
Right. So
It's kind of like Old Concord.
I could see it being wet up there, but so you're picking.
I'm picking Dudley. I'm going to say Dudley by 5 or 6. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be probably something like a 21-17, 21-16, maybe 24-19 score. But something in there. I don't think it's going to be
I'm picking Dudley. Statesville. Hey, this is not a game that they can out-athlete because Dudley's got athletes. I'm picking Dudley, and I'm picking Dudley by 10 points.
10 points. I gotcha.
10 points. Yeah, 7 to 10 points. Sorry, Statesville. We'll see what happens. I see that David's picking them by 30. He says, I think Dudley by 30. And, That might just be that partly Statesville flying under the radar. I mean, Dudley's really good, so I understand the potential of that's 4 scores though. That's
I mean, Statesville's average, I think, allowed less than 7 points a game this year, or right at 7 points a game.
yeah, but they haven't played Dudley.
They haven't played
Or a
Dudley.
team like Dudley.
Dudley's averaged about 6 points a game, allowed 6 points a game, but Dudley just has so many athletes on that. And the reason why I'm picking it as close as it is, it has more to do with that football field. I think Statesville's football field, if it's in kind of a bad condition, I think that plays in Statesville's hands a little bit. But I don't think it's enough to beat Dudley, though.
I think a big score, a big margin would be 35-14. 21 points, but I'm really leaning more towards that 10 that I said, and I'm not coming off of it. Can't talk myself out of it. Okay.
So let's go down to let's go to the 4As here. This is the game that I probably would go to tonight. I've seen both teams. Leesville Road is hosting Rolesville. Leesville Road has just a hellacious defense. They have one of the best defenses I've seen this whole year. They pretty much throttled Southern Durham earlier on in the season. And I know Southern Durham is a 3A team. Southern Durham's more known for defense, but they have a decent offense. But I just saw a lot of men on the fields. I mean, some really true men on that field on Leesville Road. They're not somebody that's going to let Rolesville roll up and side down on them.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing though is can Leesville Road can they contain Mr. Brown over at Rolesville? Can they contain the running or the quarterback? And I don't know if they can or not. To be honest with you, I think it's going to be a heck of a game. That's the reason why I'm going there. I'm going to pick Leesville Road by a few points, just because I think this time of season defense wins games, and I've seen Rolesville defense. The Rolesville's defense does have a lot of issues. The one thing I will say in Rolesville's favor, though, their players are pretty much healthy right now. They except for a couple injuries, but they're in pretty good shape. But I'm going to take Rolesville. I'm going to say maybe a touchdown.
That win over Millbrook, be it overtime, was still impressive.
Right.
And you think within a score though, right?
Yeah, I'll say so.
So you're saying, but I think I'm on the other side of the coin.
I hope you're right on that one, because Rolesville is a team that you always enjoy seeing teams that have fun on the sidelines. Those guys are loose. I mean, every one of those players, they don't take themselves seriously. The coaches don't take themselves seriously on the sideline. When they get in on the gridiron on the field, they are serious. Don't give me any ifs, ands, or buts about it. But they have a lot of fun. That's a fun-loving team.
I think that better definition of the good proper definition of something like that is team.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I yield to your having seen both teams, and I can respect your pick. We'll see what happens. Okay,
it's gonna be fun. The one thing that's kind of playing in Leesville Road's favor, they have allowed a little over 100 points this whole year. I think 101 points this year, and Rolesville's allowed 443 points this year, right. And that's the reason why I kind of go back to the defense. I'm a defensive guy, but right. I do like Martin Samick's one of the best coaches in the state. Actually, I bet him in the top 5. To be honest with you. Now going to the next game here, Cardinal Givens versus Panther Creek. I think this is going to be Cardinal Givens all over. They have a great balance between running and passing. I'm going to say Cardinal Givens by about 20. Panther Creek is mostly a passing team. They don't have much of a run offense.
All right.
So you can play 5, 6. You can play a lot of nickel and dime coverage against Panther Creek. Just contain the quarterback, make sure he doesn't flush out the pocket too much. But I think Cardinal Givens will win this game relative ease.
Big win by Cardinal Gibbons last week. Really,
Oh yes, huge.
surprising. That was huge. And I have to go with them as well. And a couple of scores, yeah. You're saying.
So let's go to this game right here: Huff versus East Forsyth. East Forsyth's playing
Let
some.
me say one thing. Of course, Panther Creek had that nice run last year, but then they ran into Myers Park. Same thing here. So
Exactly right.
all right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
East Forsyth is on a mission right now.
Yeah.
They've won the last 3 games in shutouts. They haven't allowed a touchdown in forever against Huff, who's probably the best team in the state. I'm gonna take Huff by about 16, 17 points, but I would not be surprised this game ends up being a close one, or it could be a blowout. But I'm gonna say 16, 17 points, Huff.
Okay, so Huff was a little surprising to see how that game went last week early. I don't know why, because I really thought that was a game that Huff could have had that kind of margin in the first half.
Right.
So going into the second half. And I think this is a game they can't play like they did last week. They're going to have to play top-notch football. And if they play top-notch football, I can see them winning by 2 scores, too. Yeah, I can see that. This is a good football team they're playing, man. This is a really good football team. But
Oh yeah, they've won a couple state championships recently.
Huff is on a different level, though.
Yeah.
I still believe they are the best team in the state. So
let's get to the last one here. This, if I was in the Union County, Met County, Anson County, Cabarrus County, this is the game I'd go to.
It's the game I'm going to, by the way.
If I was in Gaston County, it'd either be this game or going to probably Shelby, Reedsville, to be honest with you. I'd go to Shelby.
Well, if you were, but
Yeah.
see, a person living in Gaston County, they would go to the South Point game.
South Point Crest, yeah.
Yeah, and they'd either be pulling for or against South Point, but anyway.
Yeah,
I got you. If you were closer to the game, you would go over to that game. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So this game here, Weddington Chambers, I'm just kind of, Chambers had that letdown beginning kind of the middle of the season. They lost to Huff. Weddington, though, is just is an incredible team. I mean, I just can't say anything bad about Weddington. And to be honest with you, Dale, I could see this game going into overtime. I think Weddington is going to bring their A game. I know Weddington will bring their A game, and I know Chambers is going to bring their A game. I'm going to go with Chambers by just a few points, and the reason why I'm saying that, I think there's a little bit more left in the tank at Julius Chambers than what meets the eye, and also think Weddington may have struggled a little bit more than I thought they would against Cuthbert.
Right. Oh, man, because as I've been thinking about what I would do tonight, this is the game, and I don't care who wins. But trying to pick who's going to win this game, I can make an argument for either side.
Right.
That disciplined football that Weddington plays, that high football IQ, and that's what we're going to have here. Is we're going to have technique versus athlete. There's so many weapons on that Chambers side. But Weddington, the kids know how to play their positions. And I can't stress enough how important that is, especially in a game like this, where you're facing athletes and potentially facing. That's not to say Weddington doesn't have athletes. They do. Shipley kid's one of the better ones we've seen, period, come out of anywhere. But in general, you're going to, if you look on the offensive side of the board, they got a lot of weapons over there. And so your players have got to know their positions and their responsibilities and execute those without errors. And if they do, that limits. So a big play can be a touchdown. And you can limit the big plays that would be touchdowns to just big plays, or big plays, you can limit them to, smaller plays. So if you play good football and you know your positions and your techniques, and you can get to the points on the field that you need to get to make the tackle, while the guy may get 10, 15 yards, at least you've got the angles and you know the angles. And that's where they excel. The kids know the game and they know their positions and they play it well. I mean, these are the same kinds of words that we use for like a Charlotte Catholic.
Right.
And this is exactly what we're talking about here. Whereas on the other side, Jim, boy, there is size, there's speed, there's athletes. And it's not to say they don't know how to play football, but I do think a little more goes into the technique of the game and the positions within the Weddington kids, because they got more they have to overcome, maybe, I guess is the one way to look at it. It's just they've been taught from the fact is from youth ball up, these kids play together. And there's Union County's got a very good youth ball system. And that's why we see the Marvin Ridges, the Weddingtons, the Porter Ridges, maybe Sun Valley comes back, but that's why we see good football over there.
Right.
So yeah, the game, home field. Chambers, when it was Vance, they don't travel as well. And,
That's true. Weddington's going to bring a crowd too. You know that.
No, there'll be a big crowd there.
Yeah.
As big as is allowed, and I don't think there's any limit. So packed house. I can see the Chambers side not being half full. Please, if anybody's watching, don't let that be. I'd love to show up and just see, the games you go to and the people are standing around the fence because there are no seats. That's what I'd like to see. I'd love to see that tonight.
I always like it when you see about 4 or 5 deep from around the gates.
Exactly.
That's fun to watch a game like that.
I'm sorry, Jim, it's hard for me to make a pick here because I really can make a case that Weddington could win the game, but I think there's an edge of the mass of players. There's an edge for Chambers.
Right.
And Smothers has a game, and the deeper you get, the more you start relying on he's the best running back in the state. He's the kid is just phenomenal. He is an absolute terror to a defense on the field. And Chambers has other terrors, so I give them the advantage. I give them a 1-score advantage. But I could see them losing the ball game, especially. I don't know that they'll take Weddington lightly, but last year they were supposed to play last year, or they were,
Right.
But
Then life happened.
life happened exactly, and this would be a good. This is not the same kind of Weddington team with a Shipley, running off to, if you'd had all those kids and Power Eccles and, what a ball game. But
Oh yeah, they got some studs on Joyce Chambers' team. So
yes, they do.
let's look at
Big
the
and fast line, man. Big and fast line.
exactly. Let's look at the. I know we both probably need to get ready to eat and all that stuff before we go to games, but let's look at the 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. See who we think is going to make the state championship game. I'll give you my pick, and you tell me if I'm sane or insane. For
Okay.
this state championship game. I think it's going to be between Tarboro and Mount Airy.
No, man, that's sane. I agree with you. Yeah.
So let's go to the 2As here. Well, I knew I picked Shelby to beat Reedsville, and I think Shelby will. I think Shelby's going to be the favorite, whoever wins the Maiden East Surry game. But I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And again, it can all go back to Shelby overlooking one of these teams. But I say Shelby from the west, and in the east. East, I'm going Wallace Rose Hill.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think you're sane because I kind of put the championship on Shelby right now. Actually.
I think it's theirs to lose right now.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure for those kids.
Yeah, but it's expected out of that program.
I think it is too. I think their coaches got them trained for that. Now in the 3As, I picked Crest and Dudley. I'm gonna say Dudley from the west, and from the east, I'm going to go with. I'm gonna go with Jacksonville.
Well, see, I picked against you
Yeah,
in Jacksonville.
you picked Scotland, Eastern Alamance, which that's gonna be a fun game if those two teams play. Because they're Eastern Alamance and Scotland are kind of mirror images of each other.
Yeah, see, I think Scotland's going from the east.
Okay. That'd be interesting. Scotland and Dudley, both those teams were 4As for the longest time. Dudley's been 3A, I think, for about 5 or 6 years now.
I think the Dudley, Scotland, but I think Crest has got a chance. I really believe that's going to be an interesting ball game if it all occurs. Crest and Dudley, but you're not insane. How's that? Just because I'm picking against you on the Jacksonville game tonight, but you're probably saner on that than I am. So yeah, you're sane. You're okay. I picked Dudley to win it all. So how about you?
Yeah, Dudley. I'll take Dudley. I'm going to take Tarboro, Shelby, and Dudley.
Yep.
The 1A, 2A, 3A. And
yep.
In the 4A here, I think right now it's that Leesville Road team. It's just their defense is just so darn good. Leesville Road versus Cardinal Gibbons. That's going to be a fun game to watch. I might go to that game unless it's if Eastern Alamance is still playing next week. I'll go to that game. But Cardinal Gibbons. Who'd you pick? Rolesville over Leesville Road?
Yeah, but
you were kind of like I am.
Yeah, and that's a lot to do with the fact that I give a lot of weight, and maybe that carries over from that big win this past Friday night. Maybe the win is not as big as I think it is, but I thought it was
I'm gonna
I
take
was
Cardinal.
picking Millbrook, so
I'm gonna take Cardinal Gibbons out of the 4A. They went to the 4A state championship last year and lost to Grimsley. So I'm gonna
hmm
take Cardinal Gibbons again. And Huff versus Julius Chambers. I'm gonna go with Huff. I think this is the year for Huff to shine. They got to get
hmm
past that roadblock though. If they can or if they can win the next two games, that's going to be huge for that program. If they don't win, if they don't win the next two games, which I think most people are expecting them to, they're going to have that stigma that they can't win the big one. I think they're going to get over it this year. I think Huff will end up winning the state championship.
Well, they certainly are they're the best team I've seen, and I do think if they play Chambers next week, then they'll win. They'll win that ball game. That it's hard to beat a good team twice, not when you got a great team. So, um, and yeah, they'll have that stigma if they don't win the next 2 weeks. It took Mallard Creek a while to get over. Huff has been pretty good almost since inception.
And the whole thing about that perception, about can't win the big one. A lot of people said the same thing about Tom Knotts, that he couldn't win the big one until he won that first one at West Charlotte, and then you saw what happened to Indy. And
Yeah, exactly.
so I think sometimes those cliches a little bit tough, but I think it has. I
Uh,
think this is the year Huff will win. I just think they're the best team in the 4As.
yeah, you remember who? I know you remember his first loss. Talking about Knots to Garner, and when he was at Harding, and then just not being able to get there and get it done. Having great teams, there was that stigma there, but now Huff has had a number of. I don't know that people really realize the amount of athletes, of great players that have been at Huff. And that's one of the other reasons people knock is that Huff has not been deprived of the same level of players, say, that Mallard Creek was getting during Mallard Creek's dominant time. They just couldn't make things happen, and they had stupid letdowns. I think it was 2014, if I remember the year right, when
Right.
they beat Mallard Creek in the regular season. Real close ball game, but in an exciting play, as I remember, that went down the sideline. But then they came in and played. I think it was the second round. They met Mallard Creek in the playoffs, and Mallard Creek just dominated them. They didn't have the focus, the intensity, everything else needed to win a ball game. They were cocky. They were, just the opposite. And Mallard Creek came into that ball game focused because they had lost, and you could tell before the kickoff who was going to win that ball game. And that's kind of been Huff's problem, Jim. And they got to stay focused and play football. And
Yeah.
they do that. They're your state champion in 4A.
I agree with you. Well, we have a question here. Do we think that East Surry or Maiden could beat Shelby? And I think the answer is yes. I think either team could beat them. And the reason why is I think Shelby will have they have probably a good chance of having a somewhat of a letdown after playing Reedsville. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's an intangible. That's a very important intangible when it comes to football. Teams will have letdowns after you beat a name program like Reedsville. No disrespect to Maiden or East Surry, but I mean Reedsville is a name program, and that's a big program between Reedsville and Shell. Big matchup between those two teams. So yeah, I think it's possible. I think it'd have to require a letdown. Also, think
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to win the turnover margins. You got to take care of the ball, and you got to do all the fundamentally sound things to win that game. But yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah, so the game is it's a big build up game is one way to look at it. And I'm talking about the game tonight. I don't know how much Thanksgiving Day, though these things may dampen it a little bit, but you have a build up for tonight to a huge ball game.
It's a crescendo that's coming out.
Yeah, and so when you reach a peak, do you reach a peak is the question. So if you've reached a peak, you can have that letdown. And I would think if you're East Surry or Maiden, you're glad those two teams are playing tonight because it does give you potentially a little bit of an advantage. Yeah, you got to win turnover game, but you yourself cannot have a letdown. You have to, those two teams are going to have to play, I think, their best football of the season, which of course meaning winning turnovers, meaning capitalizing on them. So the question is, yes, they have a chance, but what's the probability? Because Shelby's so darn good. It's that you play the game on the field, and whoever gets the most punches first in the mouth, that can go a long way. It can go a very, very long way if you can punch someone in the mouth and get them reeling. And I just saw an excellent example of that when Ardrey and South Mecklenburg played this year. The opening kickoff, Ardrey did an onside kick. It didn't work, but ultimately they got the ball and they scored first. They kicked off again. Guess what they did? An onside kick. And they scored. And now, before you know it, they've punched South in the mouth so hard that South did something, I don't know that Joe would do this again if he had to, but he went for a fourth down. And we're talking about first half football here. He went for a first down. I mean, he went on fourth down. He went for it on his end of the field. And it wasn't like it was at the 49-yard line. It was down around the 35-yard line.
Which goes against everything in the book,
It went against everything in the book, which, maybe that's what you need. It didn't go well either. It was bad, and Ardrey scored again. So you get a team off balance. And when you get a team off balance, like they did, and this is now we just apply this to East Surry or Shelby or Maiden, that's what they've got to do is find a way to get early, to get a Shelby to doing things that are against the book. This is not what I would normally do, but things are going not in a manner that I need them to be going. So I've got to do something, which is what the goal was. They're not going to expect this, but when you line up in the punt formation, maybe still they're not going to expect this, or they're going to think I'm going to try to draw them off sides or something. And maybe I can make a play out of this. So that's the kind of stuff that's going to take. Go Wolfpack. So yeah,
I forgot that game's tonight.
Yeah, I would love. It would be great to see State win. I'm disappointed. I'm sorry, but I'm just we have a great record going, but we got a sorry record. I'm sorry, but we've lost to some teams that we shouldn't have lost to, and so I'm not. It's disappointing The only game that we lost that I can say,
Ole Miss.
no, I'm thinking the only one that I could say, okay, I accept. I don't like it, but I accept it would have been the Wake Forest loss.
Huh.
Um,
You thought Shelby? You thought Ole Miss was? I mean, Ole Miss is a darn good program.
yeah, but State should have won that ball game.
You
You
think
can't
so?
lose those kind. If you're going to be a top bowl contending team or a team, and guess what? This was the year that they could have been at least in the talk of the ACC championship and could have been an undefeated team that you'd have to be considering to play in the the national championship stuff, because look what happened to Clemson. So the door got opened, and no other ACC team has no, not just State. Carolina is playing a lot lower than what I had expected that they would play. None of the teams, Wake Forest looked like they might, was going to try to bust through the door that Clemson kind of propped open for them, put a big chair, put 2 or 3 chairs at the door and said, here you go. So no, I'm disappointed because I think State's record could be a little better, but we'll see tonight. And David Jim's a Tar Heel alumni, so he's obviously pulling the other direction. The thing is tomorrow morning, my emotions would be like this. If State won, I'll be extra high. If State lost, I'm not going to be low. I'm not going to be down about it. So that's at least a good thing.
I kind of wish North Carolina and NC State could have consolidated the football programs this year. Can you imagine? I mean, neither team had great depth on defense. And I think you've seen that with NC State when they've had some players that went down, like Peyton
Yeah.
Wilson, who actually is Peyton is he lives, I think, probably a mile and a half from my house here. When he went down, you got other guys that gone down there. That it's hard to come back from all those injuries on that. If you could take NC State's offensive line and defensive line, take Carolina's receivers. I think Carolina's got some great receivers. Your quarterback at NC State's great and everything, but I'll take Howell. Running backs, I guess State's probably got a little bit better. Probably just about everything in defense, except for maybe the Carolina's linebackers are probably the only thing decent on that defense right now. In our special teams, we have good special teams at Carolina. But you could consolidate those two. It would be a top 5 team right there.
Yeah, but you've got to use. Most likely, you need to have NC State's coaching staff.
I totally agree.
That's Carolina's downfall.
Yeah, get Matt to recruits and just let Doran and his guys coach them up. I totally agree with you on that.
You know what Mac should be? Mac should be the CEO of Carolina football, not the head coach. He should be the CEO because he's a good promoter. I think I fully appreciate and admire his ethics, his goals, all of those things that make a person's character good. I think he's top notch, 100%. So he should be the CEO.
Back in '97, after he left after the Duke game, I want to tell you right now, I bet you it was less than 10% of the Carolina alums had anything really good to say about Mac Brown. They were mad about him going to Texas before the bowl game. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but if someone offered you the keys to IBM, or you could go work at some type of burger shack, which one would you go for? I don't blame them on that. But I have a different. I've been around Mac Brown for so much of my life. When I was an 18-year-old freshman at UNC, it was Mac Brown's second year, and we couldn't stand him then. His first year, he went 1-10. Second year, first game my freshman year, we beat VMI 49-7. I felt pretty good. Then we lost 10 straight losses. 10. We were
You know
down
what the joke?
35-0 against Duke at halftime.
You know what the joke was back then?
Yeah, what does
I,
Dean Smith and Mac Brown have in common?
no. This was this is another one. Then it it was I was walking through the parking lot,
And your
and
dashboard was broken.
the well, maybe it may be. I actually what it was is that a side glass was broken. I looked in, and on the seat was a brick with season tickets tied on the brick.
Yeah, the one I heard before 30 years ago was I had two season tickets on my dashboard, and someone broke my dashboard and looked up there, and there was four season tickets.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've heard that one too. Okay,
Now, the one
that
we heard was what did Dean Smith and Mac Brown have in common? Neither one of them could coach football,
right.
and but I'll tell you what, he proved us wrong. He knows he's got a high football IQ about it. I, the problem I had with Mac, his first tenure at Carolina, we had lousy special teams. We would
Mhm.
just do really good during the game, and we couldn't make a kick. We couldn't do a punt. We'd have so many punts blocked. We'd have so many missing assignments on special teams. Or we'd have a guy, the only thing he had to do was catch the football, and what happens? He fumbled the dang thing. So,
Yeah, I think what really helped back in that tenure was he was a better recruiter. See, this is the one thing that has kind of always stood out is that I don't think there's been many seasons that you would rank NC State's recruiting class higher than UNC's. And in most years, there would be a huge gap between where the recruiting classes ranked. Um, I think that what he had going for him then was good recruiting, and he had a good staff. He built a good coaching staff.
well, he
Um,
was young. He was telegenic. I mean, all those
right.
things. Now I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, if you're a
No, he
17-year-old
is.
kid, you're
He's
like
old.
you're gonna listen to a 68-year-old man says, "Hey, let me tell you the 411 on Chapel Hill here." You just
Right. I think if you could move him to CEO, get
yeah,
him, and then change out his the coaching staff. I'm not saying all the staff goes because I don't know enough about the staff, but uh, there are certainly, from a recruiting point, the players are better at Chapel Hill than they are at NC State. I'm not saying the players are better. Uh, I think
more
Dorn's done a
touted.
great job of developing and capitalizing on what they got. Um, but there's certainly more talent, at least initial talent, initial thought talent at UNC. So
Well,
tonight's game is going to be interesting, I guess.
here's a question for you. If you, I'm gonna ask you two questions here about NC State. If you had to pick one of your former football coaches to win one big game, who would it be? And if you could pick one of your former football coaches to coach one season with really good talent, who would it be? I think it'd be two different answers for you.
If it'd be two different answers, so one game and one.
Season.
So it's actually going to go between two coaches that I don't know if you'll know one, Lou
I
Holt
imagine
and
Lou
Bo
Holtz.
Ryan.
Oh, you taking Bo Ryan? Okay. Oh,
Well,
okay. I
Bo,
had another guy I'd take over that.
well, Sheridan.
Yeah, I'll take Dick Sheridan for a season. I'll
Yeah,
take
so Sheridan. See, Ryan, he was man. He was only there what 3 years?
yeah, he had the plane crash over going to LSU, right, or something.
Yeah, he was on a recruiting trip and the plane crashed, and it's tough. I think my single game would be Lou Holtz because
Yeah, I'll take that. I agree with that.
there's no better motivator, I think, anywhere than Lou Holtz as far as football is concerned. Quite honestly, I believe NC State's been fortunate in that they had another extremely good motivator with Jim Valvano.
Oh yeah.
Bo Ryan was a solid football coach, but so was Dick Sheridan. That's see, for me, that's a tough one because Bo Ryan was, I know more about Sheridan because one, he coached longer, and two, I was a little more, I was a little older. Ryan was my, when I was still a young, teenager, late teenager, versus Sheridan. But man, Sheridan was a phenomenal coach. I really hate that he had to give it up. He would have been an asset, and State may have moved, forward a lot further had he been able to stay. The question would have been, though, how much longer would he have stayed?
Right.
Because he was that good that your big SEC programs and a Clemson, somebody like that may have grabbed him up. I met him. I was in Florence, South Carolina, and this was around the Hugo time. I can't remember exactly what the situation was there with the weather now. It's a really hard thing, but I was at the gas station, and there he was filling up his car, and I looked at him and I said, "Dick Sheridan?" He said, "Yeah." Like, what are you doing in Florence? He said he was, he was recruiting. He was on a recruiting trip.
I had a friend that met Barry Wilson, the old Dick football coach, or something similar, but he was actually working at the gas station, and he was wearing a Carolina hat, and he's like, "You're the Dick coach," and he's like, "Yeah, I'd rather talk to you than a lot of the Dick alums because I don't think that I think you're probably more kind than they are." But got a good Lou Holtz story for you. After he left NC State after the 75 season, went to Jets in 76, and in 77 he's in Arkansas. And right before the Orange Bowl, three of his star players were ruled ineligible. A couple of great running backs, I think a receiver or something. They lost a lot of their talent, and it was kind of touch and go. Back then, the state of Arkansas had their attorney general was a guy named Bill Clinton. And Clinton actually was meeting with Lou Holtz during the time to meet with them because some of the players were talking about just or basically boycotting that game.
Revolt. It was a revolt.
It was a big revolt, and finally got that all worked out. And well, right before Lou gives his speech right before the Orange Bowl game, and I think everybody was picking Oklahoma to win by 23, 24 points. And this guy says, "Coach, I just want to tell you something. I had a dream last night, and I've had a dream that we kicked off. The team we won the toss. We elected the kickoff, and I drilled the returner, and he fell on the ball, and we caught it. We got it." And Lee Holtz says, "Well, thank you for sharing that with me, son. I don't know how that's going to help me, but I appreciate that." And well, sure enough, Arkansas wins the coin flip. The returner gets the ball, and he's running down, and he gets popped not by that player, but somebody else, and another player fell on the ball, and the quarterback Kevin Scallon, who was at NC State, I think it was Scallon, maybe it was somebody else. He says, "Coach, what game, what play you want me to call?" He says, "I don't know. Why don't you go talk to that linebacker that told me about his dream? Maybe he can tell me how to
Ask me what that play is.
Ask me what the play is." So.
Yeah, good guy, man. I really like Lou Holtz. He's a good human. And
He had some great sayings too. He says, good thing the difference between me and Noah when I was at William and Mary was that Noah got two of everything. I only had had a bunch of Marys, but not enough Williams.
Not enough Williams. Yep.
Well, Dale, I guess I better get ready for this evening. I got some things I
Yep.
need to do before I get on the road.
Me too. Let's see. He says he's an App State fan, and Maiden quarterback has a strong arm. So
Yeah, Maiden's quarterbacks, he's put some pretty good stats on the board this year. So,
well, good luck tonight. Hopefully, not saying you guys can't win. That's it's your game to have. Actually, I think it's going to be a great ball game there.
I guess it was like 4 years ago. I think a lot of people didn't think Harding was going to win the state championship, and what happened? Harding won it.
Oh yeah, that was. I had the conversation. I guess it was probably Aprilish of that year. Probably somewhere in Aprilish. I invited a bunch of guys to meet me at barbecue place, City Barbecue, and Sam came, and Sam told me, he said, we're going to win state championship this year. And I asked him about his coaching staff, and he said he was going to call both sides of the ball. And I told him, you ain't going to win a state championship. Just for that reason alone. And then I met with him, videos up somewhere. I met with him in his weight room later. And then he told me, he said, remember I told him we're going to win a state championship? We're going to win a state championship. So he kept kind of hitting that. And I didn't believe it until they lost to Mallard Creek, should have beaten Mallard Creek in that game. And at that point, I believed that they could. So, yeah, a lot of people didn't believe they could, but they did. A lot of people didn't believe they could, beat Scotland. So they're already there. But to beat Scotland was, that's not going to happen. And by that time, I already believed. I knew they would. So Maiden could do it tonight. So Jim, you have a good game. I'm going to be. I got to check my text and see, but I should be leaving here before too long to go over to Weddington. We'll see what happens tonight.
All right, man. Well, listen, I hope you stay warm and have a good time.
I will. I'm going to be triple layered, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right, Dale. Take care. See you. Bye.